Hey guys, it's Miss Catapult. Sorry that this is kind of coming out late this week. I've been having a lot of technical issues on my end, so it took me a second to get this out. This stuff won't be due until Monday, so you've got some time to do it. It says that there's 3 assignments here, but in reality, these 2 go together. Actually, all 3 of them go together, but you'll be turning in the chapter questions and then the found poem. Those are the 2 things you're turning in. The reading portion goes with the comprehension questions, so shouldn't be too difficult. This does this week include a project grade. However, you must have a project slash essay grade. So this is your project grade. So this is not something to blow off. I promise you, it's going to be worth like 40 points. So you're going to want to do it. Yeah. All right. So here we go. Maybe. Come on. And we're going. Okay. So for some reason, a bunch of you skip the warm-up every week. I couldn't tell you why. It's worth 5 points this week, so please do it. It's super easy. So this week, I just want to know what causes someone to become a lifelong friend, or what can cause you to become a brother to somebody. And I don't mean like your mom or dad has another baby, and so therefore you're brothers. No, I'm saying like someone who's not blood related to you. So again, please answer this. You can pause this, answer it, or come back to it later, but you need to answer this question. All right, so you have 2 missions this week. The first one is to read chapters 5 and 6 and answer the comprehension questions. So chapter 5 and 6 are entitled Enemies and Friends. They go together. Each chapter is only 2 pages long, so they're not long at all compared to the other chapters we've done so far. As you're reading the chapters, you need to answer the questions that I give you. I think there's 10 questions total between the 2 chapters, so it's not too bad. Your second mission is the found poem. You can also do a rap. I don't care which one. Rap is poetry anyway, so whatever you want to title it is fine. This is a project grade, and I'm going to go over more specific instructions once we get through the first part of this. All right. So we're going to start with chapter 5, which is entitled Enemies. It starts on page 59. Per usual, I'm going to read out of my hard copy of my book, but this is the digital version that I have given to you many times. It starts on page 59, which is right here in red. So you can follow along on here. We're going to answer some of the questions together, but not all of them. Your paper where you're answering the questions will look like this. Make sure you do the warm-up, and then these are the questions we're going to do. All right, so here we go. I'm going to read to you again. Some of you seem to like that. If you don't want to listen to me read, that's fine. You can just skip this part. If you want to listen to somebody else read, there is the audiobook on YouTube, the official audiobook. And if you don't want to listen to anybody read it at all and you just want to read it yourself, that's fine too. So, like I said, we're going to start on page 59. This is roughly 2 pages long, so it's not too bad. All right. Everybody ready? One morning in late July, while we were out on patrol near LZ Gator, LZ means landing zone, by the way, Lee Strunk and Dave Jensen got into a fist fight. It was about something stupid, a missing jackknife, but even so, the fight was vicious. For a while, it went back and forth, but Dave Jensen was much bigger and much stronger, and eventually he wrapped an arm around Strunk's neck and pinned him down and kept hitting him on the nose. He hit him hard, and he didn't stop. Strunk's nose made a sharp, snapping sound like a firecracker, but even then, Jensen kept hitting him over and over, quick, stiff punches that did not miss. It took 3 of us to pull him off. When it was over, Strunk had to be choppered back to the rear, where he had his nose looked after, and 2 days later he rejoined us, wearing a metal splint and lots of gauze. In any other circumstance, it might have ended there, but this was Vietnam, where guys carried guns, and Dave Jensen started to worry. All right, I'm going to pause there. So At this point, you should be able to answer one. So who got into a fist fight and what was it about? I'm not going to answer that for you. It's really just straightforward. So the second one, how does the author describe the punches the man throws? Again, should be super easy. I'm not going to answer that one for you. All right. So we're going to continue on page 60. It was mostly in his head. There were no threats, no vows of revenge, just the silent tension between them that made Jensen take special precautions. On patrol, he was careful to keep track of Strunk's whereabouts. He dug his foxholes on the far side of the perimeter. He kept his back covered. He avoided situations that might put the two of them alone together. Eventually, after a week of this, the strain began to create problems. Jensen couldn't relax, like fighting 2 different wars, he said. No safe ground, enemies everywhere, no front or rear. At night he had trouble sleeping, a skittish feeling, always on guard, hearing strange noises in the dark, and imagining a grenade rolling into his foxhole, or the tickle of a knife against his ear. So, I lost my place. Okay, the distinction between good guys and bad guys disappeared for him. Even in times of relative safety, while the rest of us took it easy, Jensen would be sitting with his back against a stone wall, weapon across his knees, watching Lee Strunk with quick, nervous eyes. It got to the point finally where he lost control. Something must have snapped. So we're going to talk about 3 really quick on here. So based on this quote, explain how Jensen is feeling and why he's feeling that way. So the quote is, like fighting 2 different wars, he said, no safe ground, enemies everywhere. The distinction between good guys and bad guys disappeared for him. So again, I want you to explain how Jensen is feeling and why he's feeling that way. Okay? Take a guess. Okay? Think about war, what would happen if you hurt somebody, and thinking about what would happen afterwards. So just think about that. All right, so we're going to pick up kind of in the middle of page 60. The distinction between good guys and bad guys disappeared for him. Even in times of relative safety, while the rest of us took it easy, Jensen would be sitting with his back against a stone wall, weapon across his knees, watching Lee Strunk with quick, nervous eyes. It got to the point finally where he lost control. Something must have snapped. One afternoon, he began firing his weapon into the air, yelling Strunk's name. Just firing and yelling, and it didn't stop until he rattled off an entire magazine of ammunition. We were all flat on the ground. Nobody had the nerve to go near him. Jensen started to reload, but then suddenly he sat down and held his head in his arms and wouldn't move. For 2 or 3 hours, he simply sat there. But that wasn't the bizarre part, because late that same night, he borrowed a pistol, gripped it by the barrel, and used it like a hammer to break his own nose. Afterward, he crossed the perimeter to Lee Strunk's foxhole. He showed him what he'd done and asked if everything was square between them. Strunk nodded and said, sure, things were square. But in the morning, Lee Strunk couldn't stop laughing. The man's crazy, he said. I stole his fucking jackknife. All right, so the last question is, what does Jensen do to himself, and why does he do it? So I want you to think about people's consciences. So like, do people have a conscience? What do they think about after they've done something that they know is wrong? That should kind of help you answer these questions. So you can pause it, finish answering these if you need to, but I'm going to go on to the next chapter. So chapter 6 is called Friends. Starts on page 62. 5 questions, not difficult, I promise. All right, I'm going to start reading. Dave Jensen and Lee Strunk did not become instant buddies, but they did learn to trust each other. Over the next month, they often teamed up on ambushes. They covered each other on patrol, shared a foxhole, took turns pulling guard at night. In late August, they made a pact that if one of them should ever get totally fucked up, a wheelchair wound, the other guy would automatically find a way to end it. As far as I could tell, they were serious. They drew it up on paper, signing their names and asking a couple guys to act as witnesses. And then in October, Lee Strunk stepped on a rigged mortar round. It took off his right leg at the knee. He managed a funny little half step like a hop, then he tilted sideways and dropped. "Oh, damn," he said. For a while he kept on saying it, "Oh, damn," as if he stubbed a toe. Then he panicked. He tried to get up and run, but there was nothing left to run on. He fell hard. The stump of his right leg was twitching. There were slivers of bone, and the blood came in quick spurts like water from a pump. He seemed bewildered. He reached down as if to massage his missing leg. Then he passed out, and Rat Kiley put on a tourniquet and administered morphine and ran plasma into him. There was nothing much anybody could do, except to wait for the dust off. After we secured an LZ, Dave Jensen went over and kneeled at Strunk's side. The stump had stopped twitching now. For a time there was some question as to whether Strunk was still alive. But then he opened his eyes, and looked up at Dave Jensen. "Oh, Jesus," he said, and moaned, and tried to slide away, and said, "Jesus, man, don't kill me." "Relax," Jensen said. Lee Strunk seemed groggy and confused. He lay still for a second, and then motioned toward his leg. "Really, it's not so bad, not terrible. Hey, really, they can sew it back on. Really, right, I bet they can." "You think so?" "Sure I do." Strunk frowned at the sky. He passed out again, then woke up and said, "Don't kill me." "I won't," Jensen said. "I'm serious." "Sure, but you got to promise. Swear it to me. Swear you won't kill me." Jensen nodded and said, "I swear," and then a little later we carried Strunk to the dust-off chopper. Jensen reached out and touched the good leg. "Go on now," he said. Later we heard that Strunk died somewhere over July, which seemed to relieve Dave Jensen of an enormous weight. All right, so your first question, name 3 ways that Dave Jensen and Lee Strunk learned to trust each other. 2, what is the promise they made to each other? 3, what happens to Lee Strunk in October? 4, what is Lee Strunk worried Dave Jensen will do to him, and why? And 5, this is the most difficult one, they find out that Lee Strunk dies, and that it seemed to relieve Dave Jensen of an enormous weight. Why would Dave Jensen be relieved? He did not have to follow through with his plan. So if you think about what their plan was, and what happens to Lee Strunk, and when he finds out that when Dave Jensen finds out that Lee Strunk dies, why would he feel relief about that? He doesn't want his friend to die, I'll tell you that right now. But think about, based upon what they promised each other, why it would relieve him of an enormous weight. Okay. So, you can pause it, finish answering those questions, and continue on whenever you're done. But okay. Now, once you have finished your first mission, your second and more complicated mission is you're going to write something called a FoundPoem. You can also do a found rap, I guess. Either one is fine by me. So a FoundPoem is a poem that's created by taking random words and or phrases from a newspaper, book, or magazine. In this case, you're going to be using one chapter that we have read or gone over in this book so far. So you may use any chapter we have read or discussed like so far. So that would include chapters 1 through 6. They are as follows. We didn't read them all. So you read the things they carried, which is chapter 1. I summarized love and spin to you. You read On the Rainy River. We just read Enemies, and we just read Friends. So that's 1 through 6. So you just have to pick one. You cannot use more than one. You must only pick one. Your poem has to be about a certain abstract idea we can find in the chapter you chose to use. So I'm going to go over in a second what abstract ideas are again. You use abstract ideas to write about theme. So you can think back to when we talked about theme. We talked about theme excessively this year, so you should know what that is, but I'll go over it again. So you may change the endings on words. So for example, you could change has to have or pencil to pencils, etc. That's fine. But you can't make up your own words. So like I said, all of your words must come from the chapter, all of them. A lot of my past students have chosen to use the short chapters, which I actually advise against, because while it might seem easier, you'll have less to pick from. So I highly recommend using one of the longer ones, but that's just my advice. All right. So your first step is to choose a chapter. Your options are listed here. So again, you can use chapters 1 through 6. So the things they carried: love, spin, on the rainy river, enemies, or friends. Any of them are fine. It's totally up to you. So for the case, for the just an example, I'm going to use chapter 8, which we have not read, but I'm going to read it to you now. I highly recommend you listen to this so you get a full idea of an example. So chapter 8 is called The Dentist. It starts on page 82. So I'm going to read it to you. This is the chapter I'm using. You may not use this chapter. I repeat, you may not use this chapter. It's my chapter. I'm not sharing. So you can turn to page 82 and follow along while I read, because it'll make everything else make sense. All right. So page 82, The Dentist. When Kurt Lemon was killed, I found it hard to mourn. I knew him only slightly, and what I did know was not impressive. He had a tendency to play the tough soldier role, always posturing, always puffing himself up, and on occasion he took it way too far. It's true that he pulled off some dangerous stunts, even a few that seemed plain crazy, like the time he painted up his body and put on a ghost mask and went out trick-or-treating on Halloween. But afterward he couldn't stop bragging. He kept replaying his own exploits, tacking on little flourishes that never happened. He had an opinion of himself, I think, that was too high for his own good. Or maybe it was the reverse. Maybe it was a low opinion that he kept trying to erase. In any case, it's easy to get sentimental about the dead, and to guard against that, I want to tell a quick Kurt Lemon story. In February, we were working in the area of operations called the Rocket Pocket, which got its name from the fact that the enemy sometimes used the place to launch rocket attacks on the airfield at Chulai. But for us, it was like a 2-week vacation. The AO lay along the South China Sea, where things had the feel of a resort, with white beaches and palm trees and friendly little villages. It was a quiet time, no casualties, no contact at all. As usual, though, the higher-ups couldn't leave well enough alone, and one afternoon an army dentist was choppered in to check our teeth and do minor repair work. He was a tall, skinny young captain with bad breath. For a half hour, he lectured us on oral hygiene, demonstrating the proper flossing and brushing techniques, and then afterward, he opened up shop in a small field tent, and we all took turns going in for personal exams. At best, it was a very primitive setup. There was a battery-powered drill, a canvas cot, a bucket of seawater for rinsing, a metal suitcase full of the various instruments. It amounted to assembly line dentistry, quick and impersonal. The young captain's main concern seemed to be the clock. As we sat waiting, Kurt Lemon began to tense up. He kept fidgeting, playing with his dog tags. Finally, somebody asked what the problem was, and Lemon looked down at his hands and said that back in high school he'd had a couple of bad experiences with dentists. Real sadism, he said, torture chamber stuff. He didn't mind blood or pain, he actually enjoyed combat, but there was something about a dentist that just gave him the creeps. He glanced over at the field tent and said, "No way, count me out. Nobody messes with these teeth." But a few minutes later, when the dentist called his name, Lemon stood up and walked into the tent. It was over fast. He fainted even before the man touched him. 4 of us had to hoist him up and lay him on the cot. When he came to, there was a funny new look on his face, almost sheepish, as if he'd been caught committing some terrible crime. He wouldn't talk to anyone. For the rest of the day, he stayed off by himself, sitting alone under a tree, just staring down at the field tent. He seemed a little dazed. Now and then we could hear him cussing, bawling himself out. Anyone else would have laughed it off, but for Kurt Lemon it was too much. The embarrassment must have turned a screw in his head. Late that night, he crept down to the dental tent. He switched on a flashlight, woke up the young captain, and told him he had a monster toothache. A killer, he said, like a nail in his jaw. The dentist couldn't find any problem, but Lemon kept insisting. So the man finally shrugged and shot in the Novocaine and yanked out a perfectly good tooth. There was some pain, no doubt, but in the morning, Kurt Lemon was all smiles. All right, so that's chapter 8. This is what I'm going to use for an example. You can't use 8, just a friendly reminder, but this is for my example. So you need to pick your chapter. I'm picking 8. Your options are 1 through 6. So pick a chapter. Pick a chapter now. All right, so step 2, what abstract ideas can you find in the chapter you chose? you must find 4. So you can use these that I've listed. You can come up with your own. It does not matter to me at all. But you need to pick 4 that you can find in that chapter. So for example, my abstract ideas that I can find in chapter 8 include, but are not limited to, courage and cowardice, right? So he's afraid of going to the dentist. Cruelty and violence. He thinks that the dentist is violent. It's not really violent, but he thinks that he is. Heart versus reason. He can't get over the fact that he's afraid of the dentist. Reason says that he shouldn't be afraid, but he is afraid on the inside. War, obviously, they're at war. And then some of my own that are not on this list, I said fear and regret. So again, I found 6. You need to at least find 4. You can always write down more. Does not matter to me, but you need at least 4. All right, so step 3 is super easy. So you've chosen your chapter, you have found your abstract ideas. You need to pull out words and phrases. Phrases are parts of sentences, 4 words max. You cannot use more than 4 words in a row to use to write your poem. So you're going to list them on the paper and tell me what page you found them on. So your paper looks like this. It looks like this. Your directions are here. You're going to tell me the abstract ideas, what chapter you used, and the page numbers, and then you're going to write down words or phrases and their page number. You need to write down 19 of them. You do not have to use all 19. You can write down more if you want to, but you must have at least 19. Again, you don't have to use all of them. It's fine. But yeah, so for my example, I pulled out play the tough soldier, right? That's 4 words. That counts as a phrase. That's on page 82. I pulled out dangerous, page 82. Exploits, page 82. Trying to erase, again, 3 words, counts as a phrase, page 82. Smiles, page 84. So you're literally just pulling out words and phrases that you could use to write a poem or a rap, okay, about your abstract idea that you chose. So step 4, you're going to use the words and phrases you found and put them together to create a poem of your own. So you're going to use these words and phrases that you found. You're going to rearrange them and make them into something new. So you may only use 1 chapter that we have read so far. So 1 through 6. You need to pick 1. You cannot use more than 1. Your poem has to be about a certain theme, in this case an abstract idea, that you can find in the chapter that you chose to use. So for example, in The Dentist, if we look back at the abstract ideas, you would not write about music and dance. You can't write a poem about music and dance using chapter 8 because there was no music and dance in it. So you can't just write about whatever you want. You may change the endings of words, like I said, has to have, pencil to pencils, etc. You may only use single words or short phrases. So short phrases are less than 5 words. We're going with 4. You may add connecting words, so for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. You should know these are called coordinating conjunctions, fanboys, right? You may use those if you need to. You may use more than the words and phrases you listed on your paper, but you need to find at least 15, or it should be 19, keywords and phrases you plan on using in your poem. If you don't use all of them, it's fine, and if you use more than that, it's also fine, but you need to at least plan to use those 19. So I'm going to show you an example of mine. So again, I used chapter 8, The Dentist. So I chose the abstract idea of fear. Okay, so 1 abstract idea, 1 chapter. Remember, all of these words come from chapter 8. All right, so this is the poem I came up with. I knew him slightly, tough soldier, posturing, puffing, dangerous stunts, but he couldn't stop replaying his own ghost. He wouldn't talk to anyone, dazed, bawling, cussing. It was too much. A monster, a killer, he said, but a few minutes later, he switched on a flashlight and was all smiles. So, don't forget, the poem has to be about your abstract idea. The poem has to be about the abstract idea. All of these words, every single one of them came from chapter 8. Every single one came from chapter 8. So you're taking the words from a chapter, rearranging them to make something new. So here's a visual example of what I want you to do. I don't want you to write in a book or cut things out unless you really, really want to. This just shows how you take words and phrases from a book and create something new, which is what a found poem is. So, for example, if this was the page and the things they carried, see how they're only using certain words, okay? And then you would pull them out and rearrange them to make something new. So again, they don't have to go in order or anything like that. You can use this word and then 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 this word. Doesn't matter. But you're taking the words from the chapter and writing a poem. You're taking the words from the chapter and you're writing a poem. I will be available for help if you need it. This is a lot easier in person, but we need a project grade, so this is the easiest thing I could come up with. Again, you need to pick a chapter, choose an abstract idea, pull out words and phrases that you could use to create a poem or a rap about your abstract idea, and then you need to create that poem or rap using the words from the poem, okay? The paper that you're going to use to write, it looks like this. So the directions are here. Tell me your abstract idea. What chapter did you use? List your words and phrases, and then write your poem using the words and phrases from the chapter you chose. You need a title and your name, and then you're going to write it here, okay? It's not that difficult, I promise, and I'm here to help if you need it. So just to sum this up, you have 3 tasks to complete this week. Read chapters, love and spin, complete the questions, create the found poem or rap, it doesn't matter. All 3 tasks work together, so you will turn in the questions and the found poem separately. Everything is due on Monday, May 11th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. The found poem is a project grade. It's worth 40 points. It's not a joke. This could be the difference maker in you passing or failing 4th quarter. I will add the voiceover in my video onto my YouTube page, which is where you're listening to this right now. And the links for everything will be on Focus and Teams as always, but you turn everything in on Focus. There will be an extra credit assignment this week, so please check Teams for extra credit, and you can figure out what it is from there. So I'll be available this week and this weekend to answer questions if you need to. I'm here to help. This is not difficult. Have fun with this. If you want to do a rap, do a rap. Rap is poetry, so do a rap if you want to do a rap. Make a poem if you want to make a poem. So it doesn't matter to me how you do it. You just need to choose a chapter, find an abstract idea in the chapter, use the words in the chapter to write your own poem. Friendly reminder, some of you like to use other people's work as your own. That's plagiarizing. It's super easy for me to tell if it's something you would write or not. It's also super easy for me to Google things. So some of you really struggled with the shape poem and not using your own work. I have no problem giving you a 0 for something that you didn't do. So please just use your own brains. You're so smart. Please just use your own brains. You got this. Use your own brains. You got this, okay? All right. I miss you guys, and I love you guys so much, and I hope you're doing well. If you need anything, just let me know. Good luck, and try to have some fun with this, okay? Try to have some fun. Bye.